send our men and women overseas, what they deserve is an achievable mission with clear objectives. Here's what flattery got her. She got fired the next day. So much for trying to be nice to some of these cabinet secretaries. I was the only one who went to Congress in 2020 and March 27th, 2020, and made them all show up and vote because it was a $2 trillion program.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here at the Campbell County Courthouse in northern Kentucky, here to discuss a bunch of political stuff, most likely stuff that's been going on around the world, stuff like where our tax dollars go. The keynote speaker tonight is U.S. Congressman Massie of the 4th District in Kentucky, so pretty excited to hear what he has to say. Hopefully we'll get to speak with him for a little bit as well, so yeah, more to come. Hey everyone, before we continue the segment, don't forget to subscribe, like, dislike, leave a positive comment, leave a negative comment. I don't care. Thanks for watching, and now on to the program.
Thomas will come. He's going to give a speech and then take questions as well. So as he gets finished with his speech, please just raise your hand, and Thomas will probably rope around and take questions, but we're thrilled to have him as our featured speaker this evening. We are thrilled to welcome Congressman Massie. He's obviously on the ballot here in 2026, and he's a very busy man. He travels all across the state and Washington as well. So really appreciate you coming, Congressman Massie. If you want to be up here, you're more than welcome to. If you want to rope around, that's great as well. But it's really an awesome thing to have you as a featured speaker, and we'll turn the floor over to you. If we could target 30 minutes or so in total, that would be
have
awesome.
that debate, but I caused that debate to happen. I wrote a war powers resolution last summer, but because we had limited strikes, I didn't introduce it. I thought, well, okay, this isn't a full-blown war. So this week we did have that debate. A lot of people wanted to have that debate, but a war powers resolution has to sit in the hopper for a while, and they thought about writing one. They said, oh, Massie's already written one. So they debated my resolution for 2 hours. And that's good, because here's why. When we send our men and women overseas, what they deserve is an achievable mission with clear objectives, so that when they accomplish those objectives, they know they can come home. We don't want long and protracted, objectives like take out the nuclear facility, deplete 90% of their, medium, they don't have technically super long range missiles, but medium range missiles, those sort of things change. So when Kristi Noem came, I decided to be as polite as I could. I even had my staff send her staff the questions I would be asking, or the topics that I would ask questions on. And as soon as she appeared, I congratulated her on her handling of COVID as governor, because unlike our governor, Andy Beshear, she did a great job. She trusted the people. She didn't act like a tyrant. And her state and Florida were some of the freest states. Anyways, here's what flattery got her. She got fired the next day. So much for trying to be nice to some of these cabinet secretaries. I've decided when Pam Bondi comes back, I'm going to be super nice to her. But, I don't know. It works with your kids, right? Reverse logic sometimes. They do that. We give them immunity from any sanctuary city ordinance or from any state sanctuary city law. And that is constitutional because they're doing it voluntarily, And in matters that the federal government has authority over, and you might say, well, how does the United States control the Olympics? Isn't that a world thing? Well, actually, a lot of the other countries are doing the same thing already. They know it's ridiculous. It's dangerous. It deprives people of things they've been training for all their lives. But it turns out to qualify for the Olympics, you have to compete in a sport that has Kentucky. And so the framework that makes the most sense now is national constitutional carry. And the Second Amendment does apply to the states based on the Heller Supreme Court ruling and the McDonald versus Chicago Supreme Court ruling. So that's why the federal government can tell the states, I'm always worried about this. Are we violating the 10th Amendment? Are we operating at the right level of government? But in this case, we're totally in line because the Second Amendment is binding on the states due to those two Supreme Court rulings. There's no ambiguity. So the Constitution says keep and bear arms. So I'm hopeful to get that marked up in that committee. Hemp is in the Judiciary Committee. It's like all the good stuff. And it was actually in a hearing where the Democrats were trying to prosecute President Trump, who wasn't the president at the time. They were trying to say he should have reported payments he made to settle an issue. He should have reported on his campaign finance report. That is not where you can't write that off as a campaign expense. But they were trying to put him in jail in New York, if you remember, for that very thing. And I looked at I looked on the left side of the aisle and I looked on the right side of the aisle, and I said, who here is going to disclose the slush funds that $17 million has been used to pay off sexual misconduct claims? And then you could hear a pin drop. Well, it took 2 years, but we forced it to the floor. Nancy Mace and I co-authored a resolution. It doesn't have to be signed by the president. It doesn't have to be passed in the Senate, because this slush fund belongs to the House of Representatives. They may have slush fund of Windsor. He got arrested. The British ambassador to the United States. This is not like to Upper Lithuania, right? This is like one of the most important ambassadorships. The relationship between Britain and the United States, he's been arrested. The former Prime Minister of Norway, he has been charged. The Ministry of Culture in France has been raided.
Financial crimes officer for U.S. Bank here. One of the biggest financial crimes I think taking place is where our tax dollars go. What sort of pressure can we put to make sure our tax dollars are actually benefiting us, specifically for something like preventing us from going into unnecessary wars?
That's the person you elect, I guess. I mean, the Constitution is supposed to do that, right? And that's why I keep relying on it and try to force them to do this. Now, to the point about financing it. So some of my colleagues argue that Congress did and does authorize this war because they passed a spending bill that spends the money, to your point about the money being spent. And they've got a point, but they're wrong because their point is Congress has tacitly authorized it if you're sending the money. But the problem with doing it that way is you didn't have a debate about what the mission was. You're just throwing money at it. And during COVID, we just threw money at stuff. That's why I was the only one who went to Congress in 2020 and on March 27th, 2020, and made them all show up and vote because it was a $2 trillion program. And so your tax money's getting misappropriated, but also, things cost. Inflation is a result of the debt that we have. And because we're printing money to cover this. Other countries, they don't think we're a good bargain at 4% interest. And so we're monetizing this. We're borrowing it from U.S. banks, but we're letting the U.S. banks create money by giving them more lending authority. So we're on this treadmill that only works because other countries are using the dollar. When you go to a gas station and use your credit card, the people that run the gas station have to pay 3% to MasterCard. Yep. Well, every country in the world that uses US dollars is paying us 3% on all their transactions because we're printing 3% more dollars every year. And they just suck it up because our currency is more stable than theirs, and they want to know that half of their value of infrastructure won't disappear in one budget cycle. But we're getting away from that because we've sanctioned Iran, we've sanctioned Russia, we've sanctioned Korea, and they don't use dollars anymore, and now they're starting to create other currencies. Yes.
I think we have time for one more.
Okay.
Explain your relationship with
Your vote again. So thank you. God bless.
Thanks for the thing on behalf of
2016 was their ability to like gather together this coalition of like disparate factions, you know, like libertarian-minded conservatives, you know, right-wing populists, you know, people in like trade unions that had like protectionist, you know, leanings and things.
And there's probably nobody but Trump that could have done that in 2016 or here recently either.
Yeah,
And that's one of the reasons I endorsed him.
I mean,
I called him up and I said, look, there are a lot of independents and libertarians in these purple states that are undecided, and I would like to endorse you. And he made a big deal out of that. He even reposted it himself.
yeah, and I mean, and that was one of the big appeals for me too. You know, like I was someone who's very libertarian-minded, you know, during my formative years, and still very much retain a lot of those things. And I guess like what the crux of my question is like, as far as the war in Iran is concerned, you know, based on the poll you're looking at, like only like 40% of Republicans, like even within the base, support it. And considering like how that might impact midterm elections and beyond, I mean, like I guess my question is like, what's the internal dialogue within the party? I mean, are they unaware? Are they not willing to like come to grips with the fact that
I think they're whistling past the graveyard, and Mike Johnson, by just blindly following some of Trump's advisors at the White House, is endangering his majority, our majority in the House of Representatives. And I think they need to wake up soon. Like on the Epstein files transparency.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's ambiguous about, you know, how Republicans feel about the war in Iran. Some polls show they prefer it, at least right now. But on the Epstein files transparency act, that was like an 80-20 issue where 20 people didn't know what it was. The 80 people wanted it released. There was literally nobody against it. And the speaker committed political malpractice by being against it. The president could still save it by directing Pam Bondi to indictment and by getting rid of the Secretary of Commerce.
Yeah.
I got to run.
Hey everyone, thanks again for watching. It means a lot. Don't forget again to subscribe, like, dislike, leave a positive comment, leave a negative comment. I don't care. Thanks again for watching. We'll catch you next time.